Welcome back everybody to another episode, and today we're out on the lake. We're trying to get some good fishing in, but unfortunately it wasn't doing so hot. Mainly just a day to take out the new boat and give it a good old test run. But I've been getting a lot of questions about skipping a jig, so I figured today we'll go ahead and talk about the different jigs, talk about the rod, the reel, and then show you guys how I skip a jig, so stay tuned. Alright guys, so the first thing that we need to talk about when skipping a jig is the different types of jigs. You can pretty much skip with most jigs anyway, but there are certain ones that are specifically set for skipping a jig. So this jig right here, this is a jig from Super K Jigs. I'll leave a link to their jigs down below. They're really good jigs, all hand tied as well. But this is one of their jigs that they make, and you can see on the head here, this is one of their skipping jigs actually. So this skipping jig here, you can see that it's got a flatter head and whatnot, designed to just come across and skip really nicely. It does get hung up in grass a little easier because of the head like that, but if you're just flipping around docks and whatnot, this will pretty much do it for you. Now this is just your traditional type jig. You can see it's like an archy head style compared to the actual skipping jig. This one will still skip. It's not going to skip as well. You're going to have to tweak with your reel a little bit, and then just have good control over your reel. It's not going to skip as well, but it'll still skip. But as you can see, like, the heads are very, very different on these. And then lastly is a swim jig, guys. A swim jig here, you can see the head on that. If you guys have seen my channel, you know that I fish a swim jig a ton. These are really designed to go through weeds really, really well. That's why they have that very thin head. But surprisingly, they skip amazing. If I'm going to skip a jig, I'm probably going to skip a swim jig here. To me, they skip really, really well. I haven't found a jig that honestly skips better, or it must just be me. But I can skip really well with a swim jig, and if I'm going to skip docks, underneath docks, that's usually what I prefer to use. All right, so when I'm skipping a jig, let's talk about trailers really quick. Now, there's only really kind of three different trailers that I use. One is the Rage Menace. What's nice about this one is it's super low profile. It's not gonna have a lot of appendages that are gonna mess up your skip very much at all. Very, very flat bait. The next one that I love to use is just a Rage Craw, like a full Rage Craw. I might cut this down a little bit as a trailer, like on when I'm trying to skip with a jig. But pretty much I stick to a lot of crawfish when I'm skipping under docks. But when I am fishing a swim jig, the majority of the time I'm using like a paddle-tailed little, soft plastic. I don't think that the paddle tail throws the skip off whatsoever, as long as you make sure that head hits the water first. But pretty much when I'm skipping a jig, I'm usually going to keep to one of those three. Okay, guys, so now we're going to talk about the setup that I use for skipping a jig. Now, this right here is an ALX Icos Promise 7. Now, the big thing with this is that it's a medium heavy fast action rod. I really like using a medium heavy for just fishing a jig in general, but it is a 7-foot rod. Now, what I think is key about that is if you go any longer than 7 foot, unless you're really tall, I'm kind of short, but if I were to go any taller than that, like for a rod, and I try to like roll cast as I skip, because when you skip, you're going to want to keep your rod low to the water when you kind of roll through, and any longer of a rod and I'm going to hit the water with the tip of the rod, and it's going to mess it all up. So I think a 7-foot rod is about perfect length for skipping a jig. For the reel here, I have an Abu Garcia reel. For fishing a jig in general, I like to use a faster paced reel. This is a 7 3-to-1 or a 7 1-to-1 works fine, just because when you're under a dock and you do hook a fish, you want to get them up and out of there pretty quick. I like to use fluorocarbon on here. Now, a lot of people like to use braid for skipping. I prefer fluorocarbon. It does rat nest pretty bad if you do rat nest it, but I think fluorocarbon, I don't know, it just comes off of the spool nicely, and I can skip really well with it. All right, guys, so now we're going to go ahead. I'm going to stand up. We're going to kind of go down this bank a little bit and then get up to some docks, show you guys how I skip, how I set up the reel, what I'm looking for, and etc. All right, guys, so firstly, before we start off skipping, when you're new to skipping a jig, it's probably best to just do it in open water. Just find some open water to skip. If you're trying to skip under a dock and you haven't skipped before, it's gonna kind of suck. You really want to just find some open water for yourself and just practice skipping for a day. It'll really help you out. So how I set up my reel is I usually put the brakes all on max. Now, you're usually pretty close to docks and whatnot when you're skipping, so you don't need to make crazy long casts or whatever. So I like to turn my brakes up all the way. Now, when I set my lure to fall, I have it fall pretty quick actually. So I usually around in there is pretty good. You want it to fall pretty steady. If it's falling too quick, you're gonna backlash, so you might have to adjust it there. And then another thing is I always keep, before I even cast, I always keep my thumb on the spool. So the whole time when I'm casting, my thumb is just sitting on the spool the whole entire time so that I can stop it and control that spool so it doesn't backlash. Right, so now before I start skipping here and showing you guys how I do it, mainly when I cast here, I'm just gonna have both hands on the rod. That's how I like to skip a rod. And then I keep my rod nice and low and I keep it just underhanded, just a nice rolling cast or whatever. A lot of times, you know, when you're throwing, you throw to the side anyway, but this one you're gonna kind of roll towards the water when you throw it here. So I'll do a couple so you guys can see what that looks like. So there you can see that it skipped really nice right there. Just kept it nice and low to the water, let it hit. If you throw it too hard down at the water, it's gonna skip, but it's really gonna hop on you. So you wanna kind of make that a nice gradual skip. Do it one more time here out in the open water. Nice skip there. As you can see, I wasn't throwing it down right here. I'm kind of going out with it a little bit more. Now I'll show you one here of throwing it kind of too close to the water down below, and you'll see how it really skips here. Now, if I do that, it's gonna go, really gonna bounce it, and that's the problem. So you really got to get good at kind of really getting a good angle with your cast. And see there, I backlashed, I had my finger over the spool, and it still backlashed. Now you're never gonna completely eliminate backlash when you're skipping. It's still gonna happen. It happens to me all the time. I'm still not a complete expert with skipping. I don't think anybody ever is, but there is going to be times where you're going to want to skip, especially under wood. It may not just be a dock. It'll be overhanging trees and things like that you're trying to get under, or reeds that are overhanging a bank where you're going to want to get tight to the bank. All right, guys, so now a huge tip. What we're doing here is we're coming up to a dock here. Now, boat positioning is huge. Now, when I personally come up to a dock, I like to position so I can cast basically to the closest to the dock, to the shoreline first. That's just how I like to do it. The boat's coming this way anyway. I'm gonna have to go around the dock, so I like to work it from the very inside and out. So when I'm coming up, I'm gonna constantly be putting the boat into a position where I can get a nice skip there. Okay, so now I'm coming up to this dock here. Now I'm gonna start kind of veering my boat off of it a little bit here so that I can get a good skip to basically that rock and right over there. So now that I can see, I'm in a good position to skip to the dock now. You can see where the ramp kind of comes up to meet the dock there. That's where I want to go with my first cast. So I'm just going to go ahead and get right underneath that spot. So as you can see, that was a good skip right there. Got exactly where I wanted it to go. And now that the boat is basically going, now that I'm drifting around, I can basically get parallel with this dock too right here. So now I'm nice and parallel with the dock so that if there's any fish there, I'm in the strike zone a little bit longer. If they're sitting on any of these pylons, I'm in the strike zone a little longer. So now I basically am going to drift around this dock, and this whole entire time I can skip up underneath this dock, especially when I get right here. Now I can actually get way up underneath the dock. I'll show you a cast right here. Right here is a good spot right underneath that dock. Now I'm going to skip one right underneath that one. So I got perfectly underneath that dock, almost snagged myself on the rock. I'll do it one more time, but basically now I'm positioned where I can cast perfectly roll cast. And there's a fish right there. Perfect. There you go, just like that, you know, skipping under a dock right there. Perfect setup. Right there. I mean, he's not a giant, but unless I would have skipped right underneath that dock, he wouldn't have had it. So I skipped right up underneath that dock, and it was perfect. It actually worked out good. I was hoping to catch one skipping these docks. We caught one off of these docks earlier today, but I was flipping a tube. All right, there you go. Just skipping underneath that dock, guys, just like that every time. And like I said, I just positioned the boat really well for that. Put this guy back. Guys, so there you seen it. You know, we caught one actually fishing skipping under docks, but like I said, you can skip pretty much anywhere. If you guys are just learning, the best way to do it is just go out into the open water and just skip. Find some good calm water, that's going to help you out as well, and just skip under, you know, just get to learning how to skip out there. And then when you get, you know, into these situations here under docks, another good example is when we're on the Mississippi River when it's super high. You know, those fish push up into the trees, up into those very, very like areas that are just packed full of trees. and there might be like trees like that, you know, where they're V'ing and you could skip right between them. So that's a good example of different areas that you're not, you know, you're going to want to learn how to skip for. But like I said, just find some open water and skip, or learn how to skip in that first, and then you should be good to, you know, start going on docks. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope that helps you guys out. If there's any other tips or tricks videos that you guys want to see, go ahead and drop them in the comments below, and I can do those videos. I love doing videos that you guys want to see, and this was requested, so we did this one. And then if you guys can think of any other ones that you want to see, we can go ahead and film those as well. 5,000 subscribers, we're doing a rod and reel giveaway, so if you guys want to be entered in it, all you gotta do is subscribe to the channel. So like I always say, remember to like and subscribe, and until next time, keep fishing hard.